Welcome to another episode of VGN Weekly. Members of the Virtual Grip crew will recap the previous week's races and bring us one-on-one interviews with racers, league owners, and commentators, as well as others from within the sim racing community. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner or potential sponsor and have a broadcasting need, please visit virtualgrip.net for info on how to get in touch with us. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's go find some grip.
Welcome back, everybody. This week's guest is going to be none other than the hard-charging Jason Menda. I am so excited about this conversation we're going to have. Jason is one of my favorite drivers to watch, especially when I'm in the broadcast booth. So let me tell you a little bit about Jason. His very first BRL race was all the way back in 2018, January 20th, 2018. It was in a street stock at the Indianapolis Raceway Park. Since then, he's got 884 starts. He's got 70 wins. Very prolific driver here. We got 378 top fives and 614 top tens. Doesn't have a championship, but that's probably due to his profession, which we will get to in just a little while. Jason, welcome in, and how are you doing, my friend?
Good to be here. It's going to be fun.
It is. Well, I always start these since everybody's their first time on and all that. I'm always interested. So tell me, how did you get into iRacing?
I sold all my race cars and didn't have. I used to race, and I was still wanting to drive something. And a friend of mine told me about iRacing, and that's when I learned Five Flags was on there. So I was like, well, I got to have it. So that's when I got into it. Cool. Was it 2018?
Yep. Well, you know what? You have the 45 on your car. Since you've been in BRL, I think you've always had the 45. So is there a significant meaning behind that number? Why'd you pick that number?
That was two of my favorite drivers growing up, numbers combined. Davey Allison, 28, and Darrell Waltrip, 17.
Very, very good. That's pretty cool.
I've run 45 for as long as I can remember.
Did you run the 45 on your real world cars?
Yep.
So
most of them. I had a 17 on one of them.
Very, very cool. Well, you mentioned Five Flags, and I guess that's going to go right to the top of your list on your favorite tracks on iRacing. But let's take Five Flags out of the equation. Let's take Five Flags out of the equation for a minute. What other tracks, when you got on, were you surprised and to find and you've really taken to? You're fast everywhere, so I mean you've got plenty to pick from, I think.
South Boston was fun. I still love that. I like the shorter tracks with more banking. The flat ones like Martinsville and stuff like that, I still struggle with sometimes, but I like high banking. mainly because it reminds me of Five Flags.
What's your favorite car then?
Right now it's the late model stock. That thing's awesome. I love that car. If it wasn't for that, probably the street stock. Just because who doesn't love the street stock? You know, it's fun. Close racing. It's hard to get up.
I'm not a fan of those. I want more power. But
it
they
can
do
be
put on good
difficult
racing though.
sometimes.
You know what's funny is you go
And
to a real world track too. The street stocks, if you actually sit after you watch the main guys run, you go watch a street stock. Those are usually the most entertaining races of the night. Those features for
yeah,
street stocks. I mean, whether it be the fights afterwards between the girlfriends or the the drivers or the crew guys, and the street stocks always were just always been one of the more fun classes to sit and watch. Um,
usually there's a lot of too.
yeah, there are, and and those are guys that just live for Saturday too. They don't make business
Yeah.
decisions behind the wheel, man. They're there for one reason, either to make news stories or win a race. It's one or the other. So, um, well, you talked about your real world here a little bit. Tell me a little bit about what racing did you do in real life?
Um, grew up racing go-karts off and on. Uh, then somewhere in I think middle school, I quit racing go-karts and I was more focused on my basketball, football, baseball, all that stuff. And I did that all through high school. Got to race some friends' cars every now and then in high school, but not often. And then right out of high school was when I got in the fire department and slowly worked my way back into Five Flags.
Very cool. Did you have a favorite car of yours that you drove?
My Sportsman, I missed that thing. That was it was an 80. I think it was an 86 Monte Carlo. We got to run 8-inch wide slicks.
That's just what I was going to ask. What package do they have under there? Because some folks, Sportsman can be almost like a limited late model, and then some others they're souped up street stocks. So I didn't. Which one was
I call it
closer
a
to?
souped up street stock with
Okay.
slicks on it. Full roll cage. You're allowed to do motor work, stuff like that. Supposed to run the stock body, but those are hard to find, so we always ran aftermarket Monte Carlo bodies.
How long did you do that for?
Ooh, probably 10 years or so.
Wow.
I don't remember exactly. I never got to run a full season, so I never took off, which same reason in BRL. I've never taken off work to go race. And I'm getting close to retirement, so I'll be running full seasons here soon, hopefully.
Wow, everybody should be warned. You're going to start racking championships up surely when that happens. Well, with all that experience, and I don't know if you know this, I come from the real world racing too. And one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, well, what's the difference? How close to real is iRacing? What is your answer to that?
For the tracks that I've actually raced at, I think it's pretty close. They got Five Flags pretty close with how it eats your tires up. The bump coming out of turn 4, if you don't have the right line, you get too low on that white line, it'll make you loose. That part's pretty accurate. The handling on the cars, it kind of really depends on the setup. Sometimes the setup's perfect and kind of feels like a real car, and some of them's like I would never drive this in a race because it just pushes like a dump truck. But we make it work.
Yeah, those setups of when you go in, you look at what you're changing. It's like, man, I would never run that stagger on that car. Save my life. But
Yeah.
but the thing is, and what I usually tell people, you take the G forces aside because you cannot simulate those G forces going into the corner. But
Right.
for me, at least, I came from a dirt background, so I know on the dirt side of things, what I'm doing with my hands and my feet, regardless of the feel of the car, is actually not too far away from what in iRacing what we did in real life. Do you feel that to be
Right.
the same way on the asphalt? Your hand, eye, and feet and all that coordination pretty close?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I think that was one of my struggles when I first got into iRacing. Was the main thing is I was a kind of like seat of the pants driver, and if I can't feel the car, it's really hard to figure out what was going on. And so I slowly upgraded stuff, steering, a good set of brakes. So now when I do my 2-foot pedaling, right foot, left foot brake, and I got my pedals pretty much like it was in the real car, and then went off the deep end and put a D-box motion system on it, and so now I can kind of feel the bumps and stuff, and I think that's when I got a lot of my speed back because I could actually feel stuff.
So what do you have between the? Are you in VR? Are you triple? Are you single? And then what about your wheel and your pedals? What do you have for those?
I started out in VR because it was cheaper than triples, and I really liked it. But man, I was sweating. The all around the goggles, and
Yep.
I
I'm
had to
in
get rid of
VR.
those.
I trust me. I
Yeah,
know.
there wasn't enough fans to keep my face cool. Uh, so I got triples. Trying to remember my steering wheel. It's a direct drive. I don't remember the brand. I got my pedals for HPP. I don't know if you heard of those. They're really good, and then I guess they got too good and sold it to another company. So then they changed the design up and everything. So if those ever die, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll have to find something else.
Well, I've got the VR, and I guess supposedly next year the HP Reverb's going to get bricked because of something with Microsoft and all that.
Yeah,
So
I heard that.
I'm in that same boat. But you know what? It's funny though. You talk about the heat and getting hot. I don't know why that helps me drive. The hotter, that's real life. When you put that fire suit on and you're in
Yeah,
there and you got the exhaust around, it gets hot in the car. And for me, that's part of the realism. I actually kind of like. I've got fans on me, but I will get up and just covered. So soaking wet.
yeah.
So I totally get why
In the
you would
real
want to do
car,
that.
I always had a little Cincinnati Bengals owl that I had kind of tucked up underneath my waist belt, and then cautions or whatever. I'd use that to get the sweat out of my eyes. And I was actually using that on VR under cautions and stuff, lifting up the goggles and trying to. I was dying in that thing. It was too hot.
Well, I said it, I think, at a BRL race one time, because of the VR, just out of habit, I went to stick my hand out the window to try to get air in the car, and
Yeah,
everybody laughed at me. But you know what I ended up doing is putting a fan over there, so when cautions would come out, I'd reach over and and funnel the air right
yeah,
into me. And um, so, that's sad but true. Here we are, grown men, trying to figure out how to better do a video game, but sure have fun doing it. So, going back to the similarities, how about like wreck avoidance? How similar do you feel like that is?
Oh, that's about the same. You got some cars in front of you that are kind of, I don't know. It's something I've always been able to pick out from going to races since I was like 5 years old. Is when me and my dad in the stands, we'd always bump one another to watch out for this wreck, and I was always spotting them. I don't know, it's something I figured out, and I translated that into track when I was driving. And sometimes you avoid them, sometimes you're just stuck in the middle of it, and it is what it is. But yeah, I don't know, just something that came natural. You kind of
Well,
see some cars getting a little squirrely, and you're like, we're gonna wreck. Give them about 5 laps.
yeah,
Usually it happens.
that is the one thing that I've always felt translated to really good, because usually you can see that person about to wreck probably before they realize they're about to wreck, a
Yeah.
lot of times. And um, yeah, that's very, very similar. So I totally agree. Um, how do you feel about the racing that you did? I'm guessing that you did like 30 lap features and stuff like that. Especially when you're in the sportsman, maybe a 20 lap feature.
Yeah.
How do you feel about doing the longer races? I know for one, I know it's virtual, but BRL has 100 laps. But did you get a chance to do longer races like that in real life that almost has like a BRL roll package where you couldn't change your tires or anything like that.
I don't know if I ever ran a 100-lapper, or maybe I tried and didn't make it to the end. But yeah, some of those didn't have. You weren't able to change tires, and definitely in the Sportsman and the Spectator, you never change tires unless you had a flat. Yeah, I think it translates pretty close.
When in real life, I've heard horror stories about asphalt racing. I didn't do enough of it to either confirm or deny this, but how often would you change those right side tires, like on that Sportsman or even a late model?
Oh, that's every week.
You would?
Every week. Yeah. So the trick is at Five Flags you get your brand new set of tires, and you didn't put those onto a feature. And if you didn't overheat them, you didn't spin out, flat spot them or nothing like that, you could use those the next night in Mobile. Because Mobile is like I guess they call it the Five Flags sister track. It's high bank, half mile. Runs about the same setup and everything. But they had new pavement, so those tires that you used at Five Flags the night before, those were your feature tires for Mobile. So you didn't have to buy any tires when you went over there.
Isn't Mobile that track down there where there's no outside wall, and if you go off just right, you can end out in the parking lot next to somebody's car?
Yeah, and the back stretch, there's a cow pasture, and there's a barn back there, which I've seen a car go through the barn. Five Flags used to not have a wall either, up until, what was that, 96, something like that, 94. They put a wall up. So I've seen cars leave turn one and end up on Pine Forest Road out there. So.
Well, I'm going to ask you kind of a geek out question. Do you ever spend, 8-10 hours during the week soaking those tires? I think the statute of limitations, I'm sure, have run. Because I mean, that's we did stuff like that on the dirt, but the asphalt side of things, those guys that were doctoring those tires, they were chemists. I was surprised at the process on that side of it.
What's funny is one of the late model drivers I used to work for, Ricky Brooks. Him and his dad taught me a lot of how to cheat, basically, on your car. And then when Ricky Brooks became the tech guy, I didn't know what to do. I was like, man, he taught me everything I know. He's gonna know what I did. He busted me on a few of them.
Isn't that what NASCAR did? They hired Gary Nelson there to all of a sudden be the director of way back when. Yeah. And Gary was one of the biggest cheats in the garage. That's probably to catch a thief, you probably got to hire a thief sometimes. I guess maybe.
I think that's why they hired Ricky.
Yeah, I've got friends of mine that ran asphalt, and literally they would tell me a set of tires, the prep that they would put in between taping them, doing the cellophane around them and getting the compounds on them to get them right. It'd be like a 12-hour process through the week. I mean, literally, and it was very, very slow and painstaking, and it was like, oh my God. So yeah, I didn't know if you ever went through that process or not like that. So, you got to make those tires last, right? Well, the real racing, we talked about, you've gone to Mobile and all that, but you were telling me you've been on the high banks of Daytona. What kind of car were you in, and how fast you go?
So long story short, it was a friend of mine that raced ARCA, and we were down there for the December practice in 98. I think it was 1998. And that's back when they had the qualifying setups where the rear shocks would just try and get the rear spoiler out of the air. And his dad, who owned the car, was asking him, how was it handling and everything. And John was complaining about how his eyeballs were bouncing around so much that he couldn't even read the gauges. And his dad's like, whatever, stick somebody else in the car. And, when I go to a track, I always took my suit with me just in case. And I was the only other guy that had a suit and a helmet. So I got 3 if you count the out lap. And my top speed is like 181, 183, something like that. I got to do a qualifying mock run.
Isn't it wild when you you're going out your outlap and you're on this big wide track going down the backstretch, but probably once you got up to speed, how wide was that track?
Not as wide as you think it is.
No.
When you get up to the turn, it literally just kind of turns and disappears on you, and you're like, man, I hope this thing sticks. And it did. It stuck. No damage to the car. I didn't hit anything. And to be honest with you, you really couldn't tell you were going that fast. I also focused on don't wreck this.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, and I've told folks, when you hit probably 165, 170, your vision starts doing, I mean, that tunnel vision
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
it's remarkable how that works. And I've experienced that, and where I was like, oh, this is a 5-lane highway, all kinds of room, no problem. Got up to speed, and it was like, hey, I remember going down there and just being that focus, and then getting out of the car going, that was a little different than just getting around the track. So,
Yeah, I don't think I breathed the entire time going around.
Can you imagine?
I was so worried about wrecking that car.
Oh, I bet. Let me ask you, did it cross your mind? Because on Sundays, those guys are 3 and 4 wide doing what you did. Does that ever cross your mind and think, all right, would I like to try that once, or oh hell no?
I didn't think about it at the time, but I totally would have done it for sure. What made it more nerve wracking though is while I was sitting on pit road, I was like 2 or 3 cars back. Somebody lost it in the tri-oval and hit the wall, so we got delayed even further. And I was like, man, he's the only car on the track. I thought I was fine with it, I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll be the only one on the track. This dude hits the wall, destroyed the car, and now I'm thinking, now it's in my head that, oh, you can crash this on a 2-lap qualifying run.
I've never driven there at speed, but I always hear folks, because you're talking about like when you go down the backstretch, you see this wall of basically tarmac as you're going down the backstretch because of the banking when you look into the corner. But coming through that tri-oval, what is that like at 180 mile an hour?
That was, I think, the fastest spot on the track, and the G forces on that, I remember being a little bit more. It seemed like more there than it was in the corners.
And it's way more
I think
narrow.
it's because you're going. It's definitely more narrow. A lot of room for error there. Or not much room for error.
The car get light there, or was it just still matted?
Oh, yeah. So the main reason I was in the car is because John was having problems with it bottoming out. He was saying it was bottoming out too much, and he wanted stiffer springs. And him and his dad were going back and forth on the setup. And that's how I got in the car. He wasn't lying, man. That thing would bottom out, and it literally felt like you were just on rails and not even on the tires. So when I got out, my eyeballs were bouncing around real bad too from not being able to see. And I was like, he wasn't lying. He needs some different shocks. And that was it. That was my 2 laps.
Yeah, I can only imagine like that too at that speed too. Probably going the when you did bottom out, the going up through your spine, because back in the day, the driver took a lot of that stuff. It wasn't built into the car to absorb it. So that's incredible.
You could feel it in your chest, like your organs bouncing around in there. It was pretty brutal.
That is wild. That's a really cool story that you got.
I would do it again though tomorrow. Now, I would do it.
I'm sure you would. All the racing that you've done, I'm sure everybody's got their own style of driving and whatnot. How much does your real world, how you approach the real world, how much of that have you translated over into iRacing?
Pretty much all of it. That's all I've ever done is trying to go out and win. I've never really raced for a championship because of work. And if I can't win the championship, then I'm going to go out and win as many as possible. And it was kind of the old school, bring back the steering wheel or the checkered flag, which I've done both.
Yes. Been there, done that too. When you talk about that style of driving and that mentality and all that kind of stuff, So when you approach a race, because these BRL races are 100 laps, is
Hmm.
there any finesse to it? Or are you okay? I'm going to take the first part of this. Do you have a strategy for each part, or is it green flag goes? I'm just whoever's in front of me is the next guy I got to pass kind of deal.
Uh, so I figure it out about 5 laps in. If I can get some cars pretty quick off the start, then I'll just start going for it. And then if you get a lot of times you get bunched up and you're too wide in front of you, there's nowhere to go. I'll just hang back for until you get some openings, and usually by then it's 15, 20 laps have gone by, and then go for it. So kind of play it by ear and see what happens at the beginning of the race.
Well, I don't know how many times I've been in the booth, and you're always talking about, hey, you know what? I'm just getting to the front. I'll worry about the tires when I get there, and
Yeah.
it's such a cool and honest response. It makes it for number one. If I'm in the booth, I'm supposed to be biased, but immediately it makes me want to just root you and start rooting for you and start watching you. But pull the curtain back a little bit. Now everybody else is going to be like, "What? You don't root for me? I'm biased." Yeah, I can be at times, I suppose. Um, but going forward like that, there is a certain mentality that comes from that. When you run 30 lap features, on your Saturday night or even short, even on the dirt side of things here in iRacing, you do have to get up and go. And
Mhm.
how do you balance that with guys that might be? I mean, how cognizant are you of like guys' tendencies, like when you get behind them? Um, hey, this guy likes to back his corners up. Oh, this guy likes to overdrive the corners. How cognizant are you of that as you're going through the field?
Pretty aware of it. Sometimes I don't read the relative 2, 3 cars ahead. I just watch the one that's in front of me. And I'm sure you've done it where all of a sudden an opening happens and you go to pass, and then you're like, great, JR or whoever is the next guy in front of you, and which is completely different than passing somebody else. So, uh, yeah, I pay attention to it.
Yeah, usually the further up you get, especially here lately in BRL, the level of difficulty to make a pass goes up dramatically. I think usually
Oh
when you
yeah,
get in about the top five, all of a sudden you've got to kind of scratch and claw your way to get around guys up in there. And
that's that's when I hope for a caution and that I'm not in it and try to get them on a restart, because a lot of
yeah,
those guys you're not going to pass them,
well,
especially if you
hope
start in the back because you don't have any tires left when you get up there.
you hope for a caution and you get the inside.
Yeah,
so
yeah. But
so
that outside works pretty good. You just got to
yeah,
have a group of cars that's willing to stick it out there.
yeah, yeah, and I know that I've rubbed guys the wrong way in here, probably for being a little aggressive. I know you openly will admit that, hey, you know what, you've probably had a dust up too here and there. Um,
Mhm.
when that happens, just because I know how in real life when that kind of stuff happens, either you go down to somebody's pit area or they come down to your pit area. Um, Tell me how you think through that. Do you race them different after that, or is it if you're hot under the collar, okay, a couple laps, okay, back to normal, back to work. How do you work through that stuff on track?
Well, if I'm the one that crashed them, then usually next time I try not to race them as aggressive, because I don't think anybody in this league tries to wreck anybody on
No.
purpose. Sometimes it looks like it does, just the way we stick our nose in there or whatever. It happens. Um, if I cause the wreck, I'm probably gonna take it, especially if you just have a bad night and you're in the SKs. You've already wrecked somebody in the street stock, and then you wreck somebody in the SK. Well, late model race, I'm taking it super easy. But on the other way around, if somebody wrecks me, yeah, it makes you mad. I mean, everybody's out there to race and trying to have a good time, and you're there for your Saturday night. And I just after a few laps, I'm cooled back down and back at it.
One of my downfalls with iRacing, and I think I translated this for me translated over from real world. It's that competitive thing. That
Oh yeah.
competitive. and I've been guilty from time to time, maybe not chilling out. And remembering, hey, just what you said, hey, everybody's here, to just kind of have a good time, and then that um translate, because when you're in the real world, you put all that work into your car during the week. You have to pay for stuff if it breaks, but you also,
Mhm.
that desire to win. I think that grows your desire to win because you're so invested in what you put in. um how you talked earlier about this scratching your competitive itch. How much does it, though? I mean, do you have that same, I hate to use the word drive, but I mean, do you feel like you're as competitive in the game as you were in real life?
Yeah, you could actually ask my wife because she'll hear me yelling at somebody on the computer. She'll be in the other room and she's like, "I guess it didn't go that good tonight, huh?" So yeah, I'm still pretty
Yeah.
competitive with it.
Yeah, my wife could talk and probably have a whole show telling stories about stuff they've heard me say probably, I'm gonna guess. Um, my kids are the same way. I'll walk into the room after that and go, "Wow, someone really made you mad tonight," and I mean, they've heard me say stuff that I've never even said to them, when I've been mad at them,
Right,
and
right.
yeah, there's an future episode of VGN Weekly. I have to just, figure out who's the snarkiest of them all, when they're racing or whatever. I'll be met, it'd probably go viral. I don't know if your wife would say this, but if my wife ever stood over here with the phone and put something on the internet when I was driving, I guarantee it, I'd probably go viral. People are like, "Man, what the hell's wrong with this guy?"
Yeah, most
But
definitely.
um well, we've covered a lot about the real world racing and everything else, and man, you've got such a cool story and a cool background there at, legendary tracks. But that's just not all who you are. Can we find out a little bit about who you are? We talked a little bit about your job. Can you tell everybody, what you do for a living? Get more into it.
Yeah, so I'm lieutenant for Escambia County Fire Rescue Engine 11, which is I'm the officer on the truck. I ride in the right hand seat. Get to make all the decisions, good or bad. I'm 49. I've been doing it since I was 18 when I got out
Oh,
of high
wow.
school. My dad was a fireman. My cousin just retired a couple years ago in Ohio as a fireman, and a family friend from Ohio was a fireman. So yeah, just been around it my whole life. Grew up in fire stations, so getting,
That is,
getting close to the end.
yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for your service and everything on there.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting job. We got a couple of firefighters, I think, here in the league. I know Aiden is one. I thought there
Mhm.
was one other guy that was with us that either did volunteer or something. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm
I don't
getting
remember.
older. I'm getting older, and the memory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
But you know, when I have to imagine when that call comes in. Um, you know, how do you feel now compared to like when you were new? I mean, does it take your breath? I mean, you've got to be wired differently to kind of run into trouble like that, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, just when that
We're
stuff
wired
goes,
different for sure.
yeah, yeah. And so, what is your mindset when that go? I mean, do you just go, does your training just kick in? Or, I mean, do you have I hate to say routine or something that just, calms you down?
Nowadays, my mindset is, dang, I got to do another report because I hate paperwork. But yeah, I've been doing it for so long, and we train every day that we're at work. Your training kicks in, and you'll do stuff that you don't even remember doing it until somebody like, "Hey, man, how'd you do that?" And I don't know, I don't remember doing that, and just years and years of just cramming all that stuff into your head kicks in.
Well, one of the things that doing that would translate, I think, over into your racing and things like that, and even like hunting or just a lot of different things, is controlling your heart rate in those situations. Because if you control your heart
Yeah.
rate, you can think slower, everything slows down. Um, do you have that? where you can do that to kind of bring everything down and kind of
Yeah.
exhale and take me into your mind. How do you do that?
It's a breathing technique that even now, 30, 31 years later doing this, that you'll catch yourself in a fire and you're out your bottle breathing real heavy, and you just want to control your breathing, in with your nose, out with your mouth, and try to get calm in the head, and your heart rate will come down. I got one of those smart watches, and you come out of the fire and you can check your heart rate. You can see where it went up, and then you can kind of see where you controlled it to get it back down. Yeah, I do the same thing in the sim rig.
That is wild. You know, when you go on those calls and all that kind of stuff, you mentioned, you have a wife and all that. So, how long have you been married? How long has she been with you on that journey?
We've been together for 25 years. Got married
Congratulations.
in 07. Yeah. Then we got married in 07, I might be wrong. She'll probably correct me after this. I remember the date. I always mess up the year, and she's cool with that as long as I remember the date.
Man, again, we're on the same page with that because I don't know how many years. I know the day, the year. Forget about it. But then again, my kids, I screw their years up when they're born. It's like, I know their birthdays.
We don't have any kids, so I don't. Those are less dates I got to worry about. So,
what does your wife think? Was she more worried about you driving race cars or going to the firehouse?
We're worried about the race cars. A couple of times we were at the track, and I wasn't racing at the time, and a friend of mine, we were parked in turns about 3 and 4 at Five Flags, sitting on the back of the truck, having some cold ones, and a buddy of mine's throttle stuck wide open, hit the wall head on. He came to rest right in front of us, and he was slumped over in the wheel. And at the time, I was thinking about building another car, and she was like, "Nope, you're done. That ain't happening." So, and Wayne's okay. All it did was it knocked him out for a few seconds, but he survived. But that was it. He didn't like that. The faster the cars I was getting to drive, she doesn't like very much.
Yeah, every time I buy a lottery ticket, I look at my wife and go, "Oh man, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to ruin racing. I'm going to have a sprint car. I'm going to have a late model." And she's like, "Yeah, no." So,
I'm not allowed to have any of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I got the sim rig. It's you wreck that thing, you just hit the reset button and keep going. A lot cheaper.
Hurts less too.
Hurts less for sure.
A lot less, and then it's you don't have to really like you said. You just hit reset. Oh God, I'm going to spend 100 hours in my garage putting a new front end on the car. Yeah. That doesn't happen. So. Yeah, it's a good deal all around. You mentioned also you from Ohio, so I have to imagine that you grew up around there. Big Buckeyes fan, I would have to.
Yes, yeah. I was born in Springfield, Ohio, and I think I was 4 or 5, something like that. My dad took me to my first race at Shady Bowl Speedway, and where is that place? I don't even remember where it's at now in Ohio.
It's north of is it east of Cincinnati? I think. I know where it's at.
I couldn't even tell you how to get there.
Yeah. So how did you?
We used to do.
Go ahead.
We used to do Friday nights at Killcare in Xenia, Ohio. Killcare Speedway. Saturday nights was at Shady Bowl, and then Sundays, I remember some Sundays in Queen City, which is somewhere around Cincinnati. I don't even know if the Speedway's still open or not. And then my dad took a job down here when I was 9, and I was like, I'm cool with moving to Florida as long as they got a racetrack. He's like, yeah, they got a cool half mile. I was like, all right, I'm in. And I was sold. Here I am, still here.
Well, that was going to be my next question. How'd you end up down in Florida? But yeah, not only do they have racetracks down there, man, they run 11 months out of the year down here. So, you go watch race action all 12 months out of the year. So, So where are you right now in Florida?
Pensacola, Florida.
Pensacola? Very, very cool. You with your fire background and all that, you guys have had a rough last couple of years with hurricanes and all that. Do you go on those calls to help with that stuff, or are you just strictly
Yeah.
neighborhood fire guy, basically city fire guy?
No, so luckily the last couple hurricanes have missed us. Our last big one was Ivan, 2000 and something. I don't remember. Getting old. That one was rough. That pretty much flattened our landscape. Took out a lot of trees and buildings and stuff. But I am on the USAR team, the Urban Search and Rescue team. We do high angle rescue, low angle rescue, heavy extrication, confined space rescue, and we're a state team, part of the state deployment team. So if there's something bad down in South Florida, and they call for more resources, we can get sitting down there for that. Which I haven't. Our team has been deployed, but I have not, because I stayed back and took all the overtime.
Yeah, because I know the last couple that have come through there's been they were quite destructive with the flooding and all kinds of stuff through there. So we're lucky to have folks like you and your teams that can bail us out. Us mere mortals out when that kind of stuff happens. So
And the same thing that they had teams come up here when we got wiped out by Ivan. So they send task force teams in. We basically don't even run calls anymore. They run the calls for us. We're out on our house, picking up the pieces. So it goes both ways.
do you get back up to Ohio? I mean, you got family up there still, or you just basically
Yeah,
in Florida now?
I got aunts and uncles. I went up there 2 years ago. Went to a high state game and a Cincinnati Bengals game.
So
Yeah, I get up there every now and then.
so you enjoyed, what was it, Saturday night? You probably had a good time Saturday, didn't you?
It was a good time. Good
Who
time,
are they playing?
especially
So
I had some.
we're talking, for those of you who don't know, and they're not football fans, the Buckeyes are in the college football playoff. Their first game was it against Tennessee. And
Mhm.
as an Arkansas Razorback fan and an SEC guy, I didn't really appreciate the Ohio stands, taunting the SEC a little bit there on some of those chants. So, yes, it came through on my TV anyway. So who are they playing next? Aren't they? They're Oregon,
Oregon.
aren't?
The
Ooh, that
Yeah.
is a powerhouse up there. Um, well, I tell you, and you also talk about going to a Bengals game. So, they had a pretty decent game today. And Joe Burrow, man, what are your thoughts on that cat, man? Is he gonna get ticked off and say, you know what, I'm out of here like a Matthew Stafford did with Detroit? Or you guys gonna be able to hang on to him and build a team around him?
Man, I hope they hang on to him, but they ain't building a team around him right now. You imagine him if he actually had an offensive line that could block for him, where he wasn't running for his life the entire time.
Yeah,
They'd be unbeatable. But
yeah. I
they
mean,
got no defense, and
I
it's
know a
pretty
lot of
bad.
football fans. If they're, hey, who are you gonna start your team with? They always go to Pat Mahomes or even Josh Allen. But that Burrow kid, man, um, I actually think he's the
He's
best one of the lot. So. I'm pretty happy. I'm now a Broncos fan, so I'm pretty happy with Bo Nix. I think he's going to be all right up there. So,
I was
between go ahead.
the Bo Nix surprised me. He's doing a lot better than I thought he would.
Oh, Sean Payton. So he's
Yeah,
got Sean
Sean
Payton.
Payton.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are you a Cincinnati Reds fan too? Then just the whole trifecta. You follow the
Yes.
Reds?
Yep.
Very nice. And then yeah, well, I know Lowell, who runs the BRL league. I think he's a pretty big Reds fan too. So he's just, and I think he lives just south of Cincinnati. So um, there's something you guys kind of share and have in common and stuff like that. Uh, you know, Sports are pretty cool to take time off after a good night of racing. I always like the fact if things don't go your way on Saturday night, at least there's that outlet of football on the next day. I mean, that's
Yeah.
usually I can quit being grumpy for a couple of hours watching a good football game, but
Football season's over.
yeah, when it ends, doesn't it? Um, well, Jason, I have really enjoyed. I know I say this every week, but you and I have a heck of a lot more common than what I realized actually, and it's been very cool to talk to you and get to know you a little bit. And I always wrap these things up. Everybody has seen them with little green white checkers. So you don't mind if you play along here? Have you seen that part of the shows? Have you ever watched all the way through for that part?
Yeah, I've seen it. I'll
All
try not to
right.
mess it up.
All right. Well, I'm gonna try not to ask you anything too crazy here, okay? All right. First thing up. What is more difficult to deal with, a structure fire or like a brush fire, something that you're dealing with the outside and the elements in?
Brush fires, because our
Really?
brush fires here are, yeah, so structure fire is easy. It's confined to usually just that. You're not burning down a whole block most of
Yeah.
the time.
Can't buildings collapse on top of you?
They can. You got to put them out before that happens. But our brush fires here is, it can be dry. You're not having any rain for a week or so, and you'll burn down 100 acres out in the wooded area, and it can be a pain in the butt sometimes. I'll take a structure fire over a brush fire any day.
Wow. All right. Well, since we're both football fans here, I got one pair of tickets to either the Buckeyes or the Bengals. You take a pro football game or the college game?
I'm going to take the college one. The only reason that I can say that is when I went last time, it was more expensive to buy tickets for the Ohio State game than it was the Cincinnati game.
That kind of surprises me a little bit. NFL
It
is a
surprised me too,
juggernaut.
but
All right. Well, the last one here, and this one you might agonize over, but who do the Bengals pay, Burrow or Chase?
bro,
Oh, very
got
cool one. I agree with you.
I mean, look at Tom Brady. He didn't have big name receivers, but he had receivers, and Brady could throw it to him. So
Yeah, but Brady also gave the team a discount as long as they went out and used that money on an offensive lineman. On their offense.
that's true.
But maybe Burrow
Joe
take
needs
that
to do
route.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, usually we preview, but I like to kind of remind everybody here that VGN is actually not going to have any races until after the first of the year. We're going to kick off on the 4th of January. BRL will be at North Wilkesboro. And, what are your thoughts on, I know it's a couple weeks off, but what are your thoughts on Wilkesboro? Is it a track you like, you don't like, love, hate? What kind of relationship do you have with Wilkesboro?
I like Wilkesboro. It's a fun track.
I kind of have I feel like a love-hate relationship with that one. Sometimes things go good, sometimes they don't. It's a hard track. And I don't know, for those of you that just watch the broadcast, but it's unique because you're actually going uphill up the backstretch. You're going downhill on the front stretch. So it can create some challenges getting into both of those corners. And yeah, that I can't wait to get there. I think the last time I picked an SK went up when we went there actually. So I don't know if I'll be in the house for that or not. But yeah, what a cool track, and we can't wait to see everybody back in after the first of the year here. So with that said, though, Jason, thank you again for coming on. And hey, is there anybody you'd like to kind of say hi to or give a shout out to that kind of watch you either race or might tune in for this?
Thanks my wife for letting me do what I do, goofing off and having fun.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, it's cool to have a wife that lets you do that. So very, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in this week on VGN Weekly. Tune in next week when our guest will be Adam Shane. Until then, have a great week.
Coming up on VGN. On Tuesday, December 31st, VGN Weekly will air at 9 a.m. Eastern. The BRL doubleheader Saturday night will return with the modifieds and late models from North Wilkesboro Speedway on January 4th at 7:40 p.m. Eastern. And coming soon to VGN, Red Light Racing's Skidder Creek SK Modified Series will debut on January 9th. The OBRL's NASCAR Cup Series will begin its 36th race schedule on February 16th. The inaugural Yesteryear Racing IROC Series will fire up on February 18th, and the VGN debut of Yesteryear Racing's 1966 Tour Modified Series will kick off on February 25th. You can see our full schedule at virtualgrip.net/calendar.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of VGN Weekly. Join us next time for race recaps, interviews, and much, much more. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner or potential sponsor and have a broadcasting need, please visit virtualgrip.net for info on how to get in touch with us. This has been a production of the Virtual Grip Network and the Skidder Creek Motorsports Group.